This is Tossing by Wiewiora. It's 10 a.m., an hour before Lazy Moon Pizzeria opens. You have an hour, this hour, to toss. You're supposed to have 11 pies by 11 a.m., 1 hour. You've always failed to have 11 by 11. Sometimes you fail because you went to bed after midnight or didn't have a bowl of cereal in the morning, or you tear a pie and then you're already down one and you don't believe you can ever be anywhere near perfect. On those days, the store manager comes over and inspects your not yet full pie rack and shakes his head. More often, you fail because the manager didn't turn on the dough press, so you have to wait for it to warm up, or he didn't pull a tray of dough from the fridge, so all the dough balls are still frozen. Or one of the 2 ovens wasn't turned on, so you'll be slower without being able to cook 2 pies at once. On those days, you shake your head and maybe swear a bit, cursing the situation more than the manager because you already feel like a failure before you've even started. Either way, this everyday failure to meet a near impossible expectation grinds against you. If you could do 11 by 11, just once, you feel you would be truly a professional. I'll bet a professional pizza tosser, but it would prove that what you do in this restaurant matters. But instead of focusing on all that, focus on what you can do. Try to go to bed early the night before. In the morning, eat a bowl of cereal with your coffee. And on the way to work, take it easy. Drive nice and easy. Not slow or fast, but easy. Because 11 by 11 is hard. Almost impossible. And you don't need to think about that when you open the door to the restaurant's electronic buzz. And today, when you walk in, between the the music is good. Some simple drum beats, a bass line thumping in your throat, and guitar riffs with a hook. Bluesy rock and roll. You bounce your foot as you put on your apron and clock in a few minutes early. You wash your hands humming the happy birthday song to yourself. It's not your birthday, or anyone's birthday that you know of, but you're supposed to wash your hands for approximately 20 seconds. There's a laminated paper above all the hand washing sinks that says to sing the ABCs, but you don't want to feel like some kid who doesn't know how to do his job. Today, and all days that you toss, you're tucked behind the counter by the door, where you'll welcome customers when they come in. But for now, you should focus on tossing. You take a look at the clock. It blinks 9:59 a.m. You have an hour. You check that the dough press is on. It ticks like a coffee maker's hot plate. The temperature knob is set right, and yes, there's a tray of dough already out. You're ready. Here goes. The dough has risen a little, each bag forming a sliced-off cone, a plateau. You take the spray bottle of extra virgin olive oil and squirt twice on the hubcap-sized round plate that you call the swivel plate because it's set on a swivel arm attached to the dough press. You spread the oil on the swivel plate with your bare hands, glossing the surface as well as your skin. You pick up a bag of dough, feeling its weight settle in your palm. You know it's at least 3.5 pounds, no more than 3.75, and out of the plastic, the dough feels like condensed flesh, like a too heavy breast. You can't help that that's what you think of when you take the mound of dough in your hands and place it nipple side up on the swivel plate. You push the cone down into itself to form a thick circle. You keep pushing with the palm of your hand around and around the circle to even it out. So the circle of dough will fit in the space the swivel plate will swivel under. Above is a heated plate that will come down and sandwich the dough. You swivel the swivel plate, lining it up with the hot plate, and take hold of a lever in front of you and pull down with both hands. You don't press down so hard that the dough spills out of the circumference, but also not so lightly that the dough only warms on the outside while the core is still cold. You count 6 Mississippis as the dough flattens and warms and expands into a bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger circle. You pull up the handle, swivel out the swivel plate, take the edge of dough in your hand, flip it over like a pancake, swivel the swivel plate back into its space and pull down on the handle, letting the hot press down again. You repeat until the 4th flip, when you really press down, spilling the dough out the sides. You swivel up the handle and swivel out the swivel plate, but now you lift the dough up and off the swivel plate altogether, placing it on a tray called a sheet pan. The circle of dough is called a pat-out. Because before the dough press, and you can imagine how hard it was to do this, tossers would physically have to push down on the cold dough and shape it with force. No more than 6 pad-outs stack each tray, because more than that squishes them with their own weight. But when you have filled 2 trays, they go one above the other on a rack cart that you wheel under a stainless steel counter. At the counter, you burrito roll each pad-out off the tray and unfurl it. There are 2 plastic containers, one with bright yellow grains like sand, but it's cornmeal, and another filled with fluffy flour. For now, it's only the flour you need. You take a handful and spread it on the stainless steel counter, powdering the olive oil slick dough. Along the edge of the flour of the pad-out, you press into the dough with your fingers in a 180-degree arc, forming a crust on each of one side and then the other. And so, one by one, your stack of pad-outs is floured up. Behind you is the pie rack, where large wooden paddles called peels rest after they've pulled pies out of the oven to cool. On top of the pie rack is a square peel without a handle. Next to the floury counter is another counter where this particular peel goes. On it, you'll just sprinkle, a little bit of cornmeal so that when the big 30-inch skin of the pie is laid on top and the sauce is ladled onto the skin, when all that is done, you can easily shake the pie off the peel, leaving it in the oven to bake. Now, you set your stance. Lower body, legs under your shoulders, knees bent with your weight up and on your forefoot. Your heels hardly touching the linoleum floor. Upper body, torso taut, but elastic, because you know that you will be twisting back and forth. Then with your hands straight out, fingers together like you're about to go swimming, and thumbs tucked in so they don't pierce the dough, you're ready. You lightly pinch the first pad out. The flour makes taking the pad out off the stack feel like a silky turn of a page. You lay the pad out over your other hand, and it's odd, but initially you slap the dough back and forth with your hands. It begins in your wrists. The dough, not the slapping, but also rotating between your palms and a figure 8, an infinity symbol, an hourglass. If someone looked closely, they would see that in front of your chest, your right middle finger briefly touches your left middle finger, and then your right hand slides from left middle finger toward your left inner elbow, while your left forearm remains straight. From above, when your 2 middle fingers touch, your arms will look like an equilateral triangle, with one side always collapsing towards its opposite corner, pivoting back and forth, back and forth. It's confusing, but you've done this so much by now that you just feel it. As you go on, your hands slap the dough in a curvy crisscross motion, making it turn, making it stretch into a larger circle, a circle big enough now to toss. And this is what a tosser does. Yes, you will sauce the skin of the dough and put the pie in the oven and set the timer for 3 minutes, maybe 30 seconds, more or less, depending on how cool or hot the ovens are that day. And after the pies have cooled, you'll cut some of them to halves and quarters while leaving a few pies whole. But what really defines you as a tosser is not the pat-outs or the flouring or the cutting, but the tossing. It sounds so simple, but you're a tosser because you toss. And this is it. You drape the dough over your left forearm like a dish rag. No, not a dish rag. That's too much like a waiter. And you're so much more than that. You think how many people in the world know how to do something so particular? You're not even in the restaurant when you toss. You're elsewhere. It's you and the dough, like matador and bull. You imagine that flap of dough like a cape. And since you imagine the dough to be a cape, you can imagine the rest of it all as a sport too. And the dough hangs down, slung low, where your right hand cups the heaviest, lowest edge. Your left hand will spring up and out, and your entire left arm will straighten as your shoulder locks, then your elbow, then your wrist, so that your arm shoots out like a discus thrower's. But before that, your body winds up by corkscrewing down. Your left arm lurches to your hips and curls behind your back. Your torso twists and you're crunched down with so much potential energy that when you come up, it all goes into your right hand, which whisks the dough off your wrist like it's a frisbee. And if you snapped a picture of this moment, your left hand would be turning over, palm side up, opening. That same swimming hand that slapped the dough, now ready to receive it when it comes back like a boomerang. That dough spinning, spinning, spinning in the air, its beauty summed up by little kids who come to the counter to watch. You know they want to ask you how you do it, but instead of asking, maybe because you're an adult, they point and then explain to you, or the parent holding them, or especially a younger sibling, it's magic. You know exactly what these kids mean, because every time you are here under the dough, you remember back, way back, to kindergarten, when you were out on the playground for recess, away from the dull pounding of the fluorescent lights. The best days of recess were when you all played parachute with the extraordinarily large multicolored circular nylon sheet. You and all the rest of the kids got hold of a spot and together lifted the parachute up and then down, trapping air under it like catching a big, empty cloud. But what you loved was when you unfurled the parachute and the air escaped, and one by one you got a turn to run underneath its stained glass canopy. You come out of the zone. You glance at the clock. Its red block numbers blink 10:55. You're on your last pie. The others are on the rack cut and logged in, and this one will only take 3 minutes in the oven. It doesn't take you longer than 2 minutes and change to toss and sauce a pie. You've almost played a perfect game. 11 by 11. 1 hour. Just one more. And you take this last circle of dough, slap it back and forth, and wind up and toss it so the dough nearly brushes one bulb of the draped Christmas tree lights strung from the ceiling tiles. And as you're under the dough, for a second you feel trapped because you realize after this you can't be any better. You wish you could go back in school, having fun like a kid again with no expectation of something perfect, never being better. But you're here, on this last pie, with your left arm open and ready and waiting as it spins and spins and spins above you, about to come down.